This is the Other 22 Hours podcast. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Anne, and this is episode 115. And this week, we're featuring our conversation with Tammy Rogers.
Yeah, Tammy Rogers is a woman of many hats and many responsibilities, not least of which is being one of the founding members of the Grammy-winning, multiple-time nominated bluegrass band, the SteelDrivers. She also founded Dead Reckoning in the 90s, which having like kind of an artist-centric record label in the 90s was pretty groundbreaking. And on top of that, Dead Reckoning was considered one of the labels here in Nashville that kind of really pushed the genre of americana and started to define what that was. Furthermore, she is a side woman on tour, having played with the likes of Loveless, Reba McEntire, Trisha Yearwood, just a few kind of small name country artists. And on top of that, she's played on recordings by, and I need to read this off, Buddy Miller, Matraca Berg, Jim Lauderdale, the Jayhawks, Todd Snider, Corb Lund, Eric Church, and I'm sure so many more.
A lot more. She was fascinating to talk to because she's been in Nashville specifically for a long time and really gotten to see all the changes in the industry that we really dug into. Big union advocate and we talked about collective bargaining, NSAI, the Nashville Songwriter Association, advocating for compensation, all really important things when it comes to the other 22 hours. We also talked about her lifelong marriage partnership with her husband, Jeff King, who is a reputable guitar player performing with people like Brooks and Dunn, Reba McEntire. They even met on the road in Loveless's band, as well as some of the more inspiration background of how to navigate this career and saying yes to as many things as you can before you learn what to say no to.
Yeah, just like a little nerd out session musician. In fact, she was talking about how in the 90s, her and her husband were doing like 3 sessions a day. So for you that don't speak Nashville speak, that's like 3 4-hour recording sessions for like major labels with a union card every day. She was saying that her husband would sometimes do 15 sessions in a week, which is what you can hear. It's an astonishing amount of recording. But with that, as with all these conversations, there are topics that we touch on, areas that we go to. They come as direct suggestions from our Patreon. That's because they get advance notice of our guests. They can submit questions. There are discussions. It's kind of ever breathing, ever evolving all over the place. So if that sounds intriguing to you, or if you would like the moral satisfaction of financially supporting the production of this show in the only way that you can at the moment, we would love for you to check out our Patreon at the link below in the show notes.
And if you are a visual person, this conversation and all of our previous conversations is available to watch on YouTube. But without further ado, here is our conversation with Tammy Rogers. Well, thank you for being on with us. We're both musicians. We're also married. We're also parents. Full disclosure, I have a 4-month-old baby and his bouncer right here that hopefully will fall asleep.
Yeah, so if you see us if you see us here, we are present with you. We're just
glancing,
making sure that
I understand.
The tiny human is okay.
Oh my gosh. You know, if I had known that backstory, I would have gotten my husband to sit in because we as well are a married musical couple.
Yeah.
And of course, our children are all grown now, but yeah, so that would have been fun. It's pretty amazing. I'm one of the very uber positive ones because I have to say that I still think my husband is amazing. And we're going to celebrate our 28th wedding anniversary this fall.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
And we've both been professional musicians the whole time. So
yeah.
It can be done.
Yeah.
And our children are happy and healthy and great. So, yeah.
Amazing. And do you guys tour together often, or is it mostly apart?
Mostly apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are times that we do work together. And actually, we met 35 years ago, this summer, when he was playing electric guitar for Loveless. And I was hired to play fiddle, mandolin, and sing harmony vocals.
Yeah.
So that was fun. We got to tour together for a while. And then I left that job first and went on to tour with Trisha Yearwood. But we stayed friends. And it wasn't until about, I guess, 4.5 years later that we started dating. But we have paths that cross. We're actually in the middle of co-producing a record for a young artist. It's the first thing that we've co-produced together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So
How's that going?
that's fun. It's going really well.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. We have different strengths. And so I think we complement each other well in that way.
Oh, that's great. So our backstory, Michaela's a singer, songwriter, and I've always been like a sideman. Drums are my first instrument. So I would do the same thing, hop from tour to tour, play with whoever more or less. And that includes Michaela. And we met in music school and we set it up from the beginning. I was like, hey, this is your band. You are the boss.
Yeah.
If I'm not the right person for the job, I don't want you to call me. I also don't want you to get mad at me if I mess up the bridge because you're really mad at me that I didn't make the bed. Like
Right.
let's keep this separate. That has been our kind of from the beginning. We've been together 18 years this summer.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now I don't really tour much. Starting around 2018, I started to pull back on the road, and we're sitting in our studio here. We're in our backyard, and I mostly stay here now. And so now that we move into I'll produce Michaela's records, which is a different creative dynamic. It's more of a collaboration. And then especially with this podcast, this is really like the first thing we've stepped into that is like equal.
He does a lot more work than I do.
But it's our thing,
Yeah.
And it's just been amazing the different levels of collaboration with a creative partner. No matter how long we've been together, it's like, oh, this is new. Okay, let's feel this out for a second. And
yeah, I'm so interested in general in human relationships. All the different ways that we have to learn how to communicate with each other. And I think when you are both musicians and romantically together, life partners, then collaborate creatively, also parents together, there's so many different ways that you have to kind of compartmentalize and like learn to communicate. I just saw a couple, I was returning a rental car and I saw a couple in their 50s or 60s riding a tandem bicycle. They were doing like a big 20-mile bike ride and I couldn't help myself. I was like, where are you guys going? And they're like, we're doing the whole, round of Manhattan. And I was like, oh my God, is this like great for your marriage? This looks like therapy. And they were like, it is. But I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit of like what it's done for you individually and as a couple when you're blending creative lives and to now be 20 some years in. And you said this is the first project you guys are co-producing together. Like if there's any thoughts that come to mind of how that's evolved over time.
Well, I guess I should clarify that it's the first project we've officially co-produced together. That wasn't something we were working on just for ourselves.
Gotcha.
So it's for an outside artist.
Yeah.
We've worked, much like what you were describing in different capacities since the very beginning. And I kind of love that about the creative life, about the musical life, that every day is different. Some days, almost every hour is different. So I think by the very nature of so many different combinations of working relationships and environments, you have to always be very, very flexible. I think if there's anything that I would say about both of us, our personalities, we roll with it really, really well. And that's not to say that we're not both very disciplined and very goal-oriented and also historically very ambitious. You kind of have to have those components, I think, as well to be successful, that drive to succeed and that drive to do the best and do the best performance or, get the best recording that you can. But I think personally, we recognize that, hey, today I'm recording, I'm going to be out of the house for 12 hours. So I may not be able to be here for dinner and I may lean on you to make sure that the dog is fed, and these things like that. But the next day it's like, oh, you've got to go do this thing or you're leaving on tour. I'll be here and make sure the bills are paid and no problem. So to me, that's probably the biggest thing is that flexibility and recognizing that your life is as unpredictable as my life.
Yeah.
And each day can be vastly different from the next day. And complete transparency, we were both married prior.
Okay.
So this is the second marriage for both of us. I was just married for a very short time, no children. He actually was married for a bit longer and has 2 older children. And then we had the one together. But his ex was not in the music business at all. So I think suddenly, when we found ourselves together and not only professionally involved, but romantically involved, there was just this great sense of recognition, for lack of a better term, of so many almost unspoken understandings of you don't have to explain to me that you're doing 3 sessions today and you're probably going to run late, and I'll see you when you get home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or you don't have to explain to me that you've got to leave the day before to get to this gig, which seem like really small things, but in the fabric of your life and of the day in, day out, they're not. Those are the little things that can just cause somebody to grind their teeth over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Breeding ground for resentment.
Oh, huge. And that's not to say that, I mean, we're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We're not perfect people, you know, and there have been times that I've looked at the calendar and not realized that, oh, you mean you are going to be out of town that day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. I see it now. Okay. I hadn't factored in your travel or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
We share an iCal, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
sometimes things don't get put in there.
I joke around because we have an older daughter who is now almost 4. And it wasn't until she was born that we started sharing a calendar.
Oh, wow. You guys survived that long?
Woo.
I know.
Well, it was a big step for me. At that point, we'd been together for 14 years, you know, and married for 6 or 7 of that and lived together for most of that time. Our lives had been intermingled for a long time.
Yeah.
And that was a big step. Really had to like do some personal work and like, because I'm very organized and meticulous with like how I keep my schedule. Like
your calendar.
And I also understand that even prior to kids, if it's not in my calendar, I'm not going to remember it. And I know that. So like, I make sure that things are neat in my calendar so I can see what's there and plan ahead. That's not Michaela's strong suit.
Yeah.
I will say. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to share calendar. Here we go. And it was a big step, but now it's essential. Once I learned that I could change the color of her calendars in my calendar so they look a little more transparent. Mine are nice and bold. Hers are a little more, it's perfect.
But there's
have
also
to.
still arguments, you know, where I'll be like, I don't think I need to communicate something because didn't you see it on the calendar? And like, oh, you don't have alerts when I add something? I'm alerted. But these systems, I have a good friend who just had a baby and we have these conversations of like the systems that we've learned now, adding children into the mix of being 2 working parents in relation with each other, working together, all this stuff. Like that's the kind of nitty gritty that I used to think was so boring and now is so exciting because it makes life easier, and learning how other people do it is so fun, especially when your life is full of lots of different things, which it sounds like your life has been. You are
very much
a songwriter, have solo projects, you're a co-founder and active member of the SteelDrivers, and you founded a record label in the early 90s?
Yeah, back in the 90s. Yeah, I'm not really involved with that anymore, but at that time period, yeah.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about that? Just because it feels like today it's very common for artists to be independent and start their own label, and it seems less common to have happened back then. And I'm super curious about the mindset to do that and the business mind as well.
Absolutely. And we were very early adapters into what now is a more common business model. But I was very, very fortunate to be involved with this group of kind of like-minded musicians, singer-songwriters there in Nashville. I was the baby by, most of the guys were 10 years older than me, 10 plus years. So I greatly benefited from their experience. They had already kind of been through the process of being on major labels. Kevin Welch was one of the original founders, and he had had 2 records out on Warner Brothers. Kieran Kane was another partner. He had been in the O'Kanes in the 80s, and I think they had been on, I think it was Columbia, Sony, had put 3 records out. He'd had a solo record on Atlantic. Harry Stinson was more behind the scenes producer, but had dealt with record labels for years. Mike Henderson, who went on to be one of the co-founders of the SteelDrivers, that's where we met, had a record out on RCA. So all those guys took me under their wing as part of that, which was an unbelievable gift. So I was able to creatively be a part of this thing and watch the business aspect of how all that, I can't take credit for the business side of it at all because I knew nothing. Nothing. But it was hard, you know, in those days, even with that background and with those guys that knew everybody in Nashville by that point and had these track records of working and having product out on major labels, it was still unbelievably hard to found an indie label and set up those deals for distribution. We worked with Rounder at one point to distribute the records, and then worked with another company later. You know, all those things. We never took outside funding it was a great thing to be party to and almost be a fly on the wall because I learned a tremendous amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of how all that happened.
I'm wondering how having that early on informed your perception and relationship with the music industry. And as you continued on developing a band, because I feel like so many conversations with artists in the music industry is this kind of like separation of like the musicians and then the industry. And this kind of challenging feeling of like, how do I get accepted in there or get support? Or those that, you know, we've talked to lots of people who've been completely independent for the entirety of their career. And we're just like, I'm creating my own thing. So I'm curious what that relationship was like for you.
You know, I think I evolved into realizing, at least for myself, I don't like the business side. I can do it. In one sense, my husband and I have been small business owners now for 30 plus years,
Right.
You know, being independent, self-employed musicians,
Mm-hmm.
basically freelance, both of us. You know, all the bookkeeping and billing and invoicing and
Yeah.
the stuff, the nuts and bolts. I don't love that. I would rather pick up a guitar and write a song. I would rather be in the studio. I'd rather be on stage. I would rather be doing all the creative side, unfortunately. I came around more to the viewpoint of if you can find the right partnership. And I heard a famous quote years ago. I was really great friends with Roger Miller, his son, Dean Miller. Back in the 90s, we wrote a bunch of stuff together. Dean and I did.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me one time that somebody asked his dad, because his dad never left Sony Tree. He was there for 20, 30 years. And he could have totally left and kept his own publishing or whatever. But he recognized the value of having a partner and doing the parts that he didn't love doing. And he said, I'd rather have half of something than all of nothing.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuck with me, you know, because I do think, you know, the Dead Reckoning thing, as cool as it was in the 90s and everybody in town knew about it and thought it was the coolest thing ever. And we joke about being Americana before Americana was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason that it's not still really a happening vital label, in my opinion, is that we didn't take outside funding. And so there was only so far that it ever could go. And that's okay.
Right.
It's a decision that you make. And that was the decision that that group of people made. And this year is actually the 30th anniversary of the label. And it's a great catalog that is still owned by these same people. But nobody anymore really has the wherewithal or the time or the energy to keep working it, you know, so it kind of became almost a dormant situation. And of course, the SteelDrivers, when we got together, we didn't put out a Dead Reckoning record. We signed with Rounder.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great working relationship for us. And I think, at least myself, by then I recognized I would prefer to have a partnership with someone. And yeah, you give up something for that. But I feel like in the long run for us, it got us further down the line where we wanted to be, doing the things that we didn't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so vital. In a way, I've tricked myself into liking the business part of everything because I've been able to find the creativity in it and how I approach it.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so what you were just saying, that sentiment of like finding the right partner and viewing it as a partnership and a collaboration.
Yep.
To me, that relates to, you know, as a producer, like who I hire for a record. You know, it's like people's strengths cover up somebody else's weakness or whatever. Everything fits together like a puzzle. And that's so true. When you find that right synergy, you know, the sum is greater than the parts.
I think everything works that way. Having a booking agent. I don't hardly know any artist that loves to do the booking.
Yeah.
That loves to call up a club and go, you know, I'm really awesome. You should book me. And, you know, I'm really worth $5,000, even though your club only seats 100 people.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And then follow up 15 times.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that sounds like a burning hell.
Yeah.
I do not want to do that. I've never wanted to do that. I'm the worst self-promoter probably on the planet. I do not want to sit here and tell you how great I am at whatever it is. It makes the skin crawl.
Yes.
Now, if you like doing that, awesome.
Yeah.
I admire that. I admire people that can do that. But again, I don't want to do that. So I am so happy. We've had the best booking agent now for at least the last 10 years. I love them. I'm happy to write that check or them take their commission. Please, you deserve it. And they have been incredible partners with us. And that's how I look at
Yeah.
that. That is a partnership.
What I'm hearing you say is also like knowing what you want and are able to do and what you're willing to give up to not do those things. Because there's so many of those things of like, okay, if I want a record deal because I know that that's the way that like I'm going to have distribution, all these things, what the label offers and what I'm willing to give up for that, whether it's master ownership of my records or, you know, the money, whatever, agent, all of that stuff. And then going from there, we always reference like BJ Barham from American Aquarium. He's owned his own records and he does that. And he was telling us about how when he puts out a record and does a pre-sale, he and his wife do all the packaging and shipping of their records.
There was one record, this was a few records ago for him now, but they sent out 20,000 vinyl records between the two of them.
Oh my God.
Put them in sleeves, addressed them, all of them, stamped them, and then brought them to the post office.
Can you imagine?
I know. And he's like, we're willing to do it. So that's a portion of our income that we get to keep. But if that was torture for him, of course, he would outsource it. So it's like really getting to know yourself, I think, is the important process, which can also change. Like I talk all the time. I've had indie deals for the last 10 years. I've been in deals where they own my masters. And I just got to a place where that started to not sit well with me. And I got out of my deal. And now I'm in this in-between place where every other day I'm like, no, I want to do it all myself. And then I'm like, no way, I do not. We need to find a new partnership that won't own my masters. We'll do a license, you know, and you have to kind of get to know, depending on what's going on in your life, what you're excited by and what your time is worth for you and finding those relationships. And like you said, SteelDrivers have been around a lot longer than 10 years, but the past 10 years is where you've had that great working relationship with an agent.
Great. Yeah. We are actually this summer celebrating our 20th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
I think to speak to your comment just a moment ago, and again, that's one of the other things I love about the creative life is you're allowed this almost river to travel on and it changes through time. And you certainly learn if you're paying attention along the way. So the record deal that we were offered 18 years ago, we wouldn't accept today.
Exactly.
Because that was the deal that we could strike then. And that was also, I mean, even then it was a pretty great deal for the times. Great royalty rate. They gave us complete autonomy. We've never had to send in demos. We turned in a completed record. That was pretty unheard of at that time.
Yeah.
But now, since the business models have changed through time, you know, what you said, the record that's coming out this Friday and our last record prior to that came out a year and a half ago, it's a lease deal. It's a 3-year lease. So finally, after 5 records, these 2 will be the 6th and 7th records, and we finally will own the masters.
Yeah.
And that's huge. But that wasn't a viable option.
Right.
I guess going back to when we first started the process. It hadn't become a common option for artists to really work that way. You evolve. That's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah. When you were first bringing the SteelDrivers to Rounder, were you personally involved with structuring that deal? I'm just wondering if there was any kind of connection between your experience with Dead Reckoning and then carving that deal.
Actually, Ken approached us, Ken Irwin, and then really it was more Mike Henderson who kind of was the point person. And we've always kind of worked that way in the band. We've always had people kind of do different things kind of based on their strengths. And again, you know, Mike was 11 or 12 years older than me. So he had already been through record deals and kind of had more experience in that department of talking to people and working from the business side. So I was just more of a observer in that. But certainly we were all on the same page, like, yes, we want to do this.
Yeah.
Being involved in so many different projects that are your own, hired for other people, contributing to tons of people's records. When you look back on your many years of doing this, were there ever any times where it didn't feel like, oh, the next job just came and that it was a constant flow? Did you have any times, even if it was like a month, where you had to like be like, wait, what do I do? Those down times of like regenerating or panic, has that ever happened for you?
You know, other than COVID, I've been so fortunate that I have just always been, once I got going, I had a few years right after college that were a little like, woo, what's going on? How am I going to do this? How am I going to make money? All that sort of thing. But once I got to Nashville, once I got that first job with Patty Loveless, I have been so incredibly blessed and fortunate that it's just been pretty nonstop. That's the only audition I ever took.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, that's a great first entry point.
It was amazing. A couple things about that. I think, one, when that opportunity presented itself, I was ready for it. I had done the work. I had been playing and playing very seriously since I was about 11 or 12. And I went to college, played in so many different types of settings, got out of college, played as much as I could for 3 years. So I was 25 when I got that audition, and I was ready. The skills, the technical aspects of playing, singing, doing what the job required, I was ready for it. That was one component. The second thing is once I got the job and was in that sphere, then it was just a matter of meeting and networking. And every musical experience since then has been from just meeting this person who introduced me to that person. And then, I'm going to call you for that. And then I'm going to go play this showcase at the Bluebird. And then 3 people that see me there call me for, it was just a really natural evolution of being present and meeting people and saying yes.
Yeah.
That would be the third point. I've done a fair amount of teaching through the years, and I always tell my students, say yes. Just say yes. After you've said yes and you've had that experience, then if you realize, okay, I didn't like that kind of music that I was called for, or I didn't like that experience, then you can say no to the next time. But I said yes to everything. If my calendar allowed it and I could physically show up and be there, I said yes. There's a really well-known producer in Nashville now that he used to love to tell this story about me that in the 90s, I was so busy, and that sounds like back in the 90s, I was so busy around Nashville that I ran into him it was either 2 or 3 different clubs the same night, playing for different people on the same night.
Yeah.
And I guess my point was I love music. I love all different types of music. So why not say yes if I can possibly do it and be there? Because you never know. And, then the next step after that is then you start saying no to the things you don't like, or you get so busy that you can't do. And then those no's start being as important as your yeses, because that starts changing your direction towards the things you really love and the things you really want to do.
I like that.
Yeah. You're touching on something that's just been kind of ruminating in the back of my mind for the last few months. And it's the distinction between moving towards doors that are open or taking the effort and the confidence and the risk of creating doors. And I feel like I'll take a big swing. I think like entrepreneurship right now in the world is like a very hot thing. Create your own business, be an entrepreneur, start 8 businesses, like all of that. And so the mindset is very much like, think of what you want, create the door, make it happen, don't stop. It sounds like your approach from like the saying yes is really just like keeping your eyes open and following those doors that are open. But, with things such as Dead Reckoning or the SteelDrivers, you're creating your own door. And I'm wondering like if that was a conscious switch that you made, or if there has ever been a switch, if you find yourself just still saying yes.
The first part of the question, I guess, creating our own door, that's kind of a 50-50, because I don't think I knew when I started playing music with that group of people, those guys, that it was going to lead to those things. So initially, I got a cold call from Kieran Kane. He had seen me on TV with Trisha Yearwood. So when his Atlantic record was getting ready to come out, he needed to go do some radio shows and radio tour stuff. That's how they used to send artists out. Tracked me down somehow. I don't even know how he did. I don't remember that story. But cold called me, and I knew of his reputation, and I loved the O'Kanes and knew that they did a lot with Emmylou Harris, who was my all-time favorite. And, just the crowd that he was associated with was, in my opinion, super hip at that time in Nashville. So he called me up. Hey, would you be interested in doing this? Yes. I didn't ask how much money it paid. I didn't ask how long it was going to last. I just knew I wanted to do it. That I knew the music was going to be stuff that I would love. and the crowd of people would be the people that I would want to meet. That was a just say yes thing.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, Kevin's going to come in and do the show with us at the Bluebird. Are you up for that? Yes. Hey, we're going to go out and do some dates. You up for that? Yes. On my next record, I'm thinking about leaving Atlantic Records. We're thinking about starting a record label. Do you want to be part of that? Yes. That's how that happened.
I feel like I would be remiss to not ask. I feel like so many of my female friends who are musicians, not solo singer-songwriters, who are like me, where I just go out and play shows and I like bring my baby with me. How did motherhood impact that? And did it? Being able to say yes to everything still, and also in a lot of these circles, it sounds like you were the only woman.
It was difficult. I'm not going to lie. There were some things I did have to say no to, but it was more me, not because my husband expected me to stay home, with our daughter. It was me wanting to stay home and not miss those experiences. So I didn't really go back out on the road much until she was about 3.5 or 4. So the only stuff that I missed was more kind of around town. Again, it was great that my husband was a musician because his schedule was pretty fluid. So if it was something really important, he would step up and be the one to manage. Or we had great family help. My mother-in-law would come down and stay 3 or 4 days if it was something that I really felt like I need to do this. But most of my work during those early years was in town, whether it was studio work or songwriting, that type of thing. Once I did go back out on the road with Reba McEntire, then it was kind of like, wow, this is interesting. And not being the artist, I couldn't just take her with me. It was suddenly things got really all about scheduling. At the time, though, I was also an adjunct at Belmont. So believe it or not, I had a really great resource of college girls. I would get to know a lot of them as my students. And then, it was really easy to go, okay, I've gotten to know this person. Hey, would you be interested in doing some nannying? And most of them were like, yeah, that'd be great. So we had a handful of girls that really would come and stay with our daughter for 2 or 3 days if we needed. Because at one point, starting in 2006, my husband and I, we were both on tour with Reba. So that got pretty nutty.
The Reba touring and kind of the bigger pop country, those aren't super long stretches, right? Those would be short.
Yeah, those are always great for musicians in Nashville, particularly, to have pretty stable home life because you usually are just gone on weekends and you're home most either Sundays or Mondays and don't leave until Wednesday or Thursday.
That is such a big, I feel like in the kind of Americana scene, or even we know somebody who played with Bob Dylan and they'd be on tour for like 10 weeks straight.
Yeah.
That is so hard.
Yeah. I remember walking around a mall, I think it was probably in 2005 before my husband came on with Reba. And we just happened to be out far enough west that they didn't fly us home. And I think it was on day 10 or 11. And I was like, I can't do this anymore, man. Somebody else is raising my kid.
Yeah.
And I was just crying. And he was like, no, they're not. You'll be home soon. You don't have to do this every week. He talked me down, talked me through it. It was really great. But yeah, we were pretty lucky that we never went more than probably about 10 days to 2 weeks away from home.
Doing road work and studio work, was there ever internal conflict with you? Like, I know a lot of people that have big tours, and for instance, they'll fly home and they land at 6 a.m. and then go right
so they can go to the studio. I've been there, done that.
Just deathly afraid that as soon as they say no, their phone's going to stop ringing.
Yeah. Oh, all of that. And it just kills you because historically the studio work was always the better paying work. And for those of us that are real, kind of muso heads, we grew up reading the album credits.
Yep. That's
so there was always kind of this hierarchy of you wanted to be one of those recording musicians, not just a touring guy.
Right.
And when I first got to Nashville, it was a huge divide because hardly any artists used their road band on their records.
Right.
It was the session guys. So that was the goal, which is why I hopped off the road very early. I got off the road in January of 93 because I was starting to get calls for studio work, which is what we all aspired to at that point. That's all I did for about 11 years. And some free, I would go out the Reckoning stuff was in there, but we would tour very sporadically. And, I might go out and sub for somebody and do a weekend here or there, or just limited touring stuff. I mean, I always kept playing live, but during those years, it was the publishing deal that I had and then the recording.
Mhm.
Those were my two main things that I was working really hard towards. But then somewhere in the early 2000s, suddenly you had artists that were hiring their studio guys to go out. And that started becoming more a thing because I think the session world labels had started folding. Because in the early 90s, when I first got to town, there were 20 major labels.
Whoa.
Wow.
And now what are there? Like 3?
Yeah.
Right.
So you can imagine every label had a roster of at least 10 to 12 artists. Most of those artists were putting out a record every year. The cycle was, if not a record a year, every year and a half to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So think about 200 major label artists in town and how many recording sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The amount of work was massive,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is why it supported so many musicians in the studios, because then you had 100 or 200 or 300 publishing companies, major down to small indies, that all had a roster of writers.
Mm-hmm.
There may have even been 1,000 writers in town at that time that had publishing deals.
Wow.
And they were all doing demos. I mean, sessions, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. My husband routinely during those years was doing 15 sessions a week.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I mean, triples
And
almost every day of the week.
And I'm assuming the fees for each session were considerably better than they are today.
Oh, well, it was almost all on the card, union scale.
Mhm.
And most
Right.
of the major label records were paying double scale, which is kind of unheard of now. So it was crazy. But that arc, suddenly country kind of started rolling out of favor. Indie pop got hot again. And some of those labels got folded back down into Sony instead of having Sony and Columbia and whatever their other under that.
Mm-hmm.
It all just became one Sony.
Yeah.
Right.
Then suddenly the publishing houses started selling to the bigger.
Yeah.
The business started getting smaller, less opportunity for the studio guys. So when Reba, our example, suddenly she went out and she hadn't had a band for a number of years because she'd been in LA doing her TV show, he hired a bunch of studio guys
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and started paying comparable to doing sessions for that day. And they were like, okay, we'll go out and do that. So then the whole mindset of being out on the road changed.
It's so interesting. I'm always curious. We've been in Nashville for 10 years. We're in our late 30s. We lived in New York City before that. But I always want to hear from people that have been here working since the 90s and 80s. And I think our oldest guest was
86.
86. Was
amazing.
Alice Gerard was our.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And she's still touring.
Still going strong.
But talking about how the possibility of income has just changed so much. And I've had this conversation. One of my really close friends is a session musician. And in different moments when she's been like, why is it so hard to make a living? And we would talk about it. And I'd be like, given your resume, the caliber of artists you've played with, the things that you've done, if you were doing this in the 90s, I think you would probably be so much better off financially.
Yeah.
And then one of the things we do like to talk about is how we can put our sense of worth, attach it to our finances. And in this ever-changing music industry, it's just so hard to do that today because I feel like so many people are like, wait, I'm not making much money, so I must just be sucking at this. And it's like, well, no, that's one of the kind of ethos behind this is to pull that curtain back and be like, this isn't a you problem. This is an industry problem. It's just financially really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So hearing that is helpful.
Yeah. And my heart hurts, literally hurts for young musicians and artists that are in their 20s right now because of that very situation that you just described. And it's not their fault. They couldn't control when they were born and when they came of age.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this golden time, and not that everything was perfect by any means, it never is, but the time that I made it to Nashville and got those first jobs, and the fact that the cost of living in Nashville was so much less. Oh my gosh.
It's pretty ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And I had to even tell you guys this. I bought my first house when I was 26
Yeah,
in Sylvan Park.
I was like, what part of town and how much was it?
Yeah.
It was $76,000.
Well, you can't buy a closet in Sylvan Park for that amount now.
No. And it was a duplex.
Yeah.
I still own it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I know you're laughing. It hurts my heart
Yeah.
that young people aren't able to do that in Nashville right now.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of real estate and living there is so out of bounds
Yep.
with what it was relative 35 years ago when I got there. I mean, I know everything has gone up. I'm not naive, and I understand all that.
But incomes haven't gone up that much. Like,
No.
When you ask what session fees were like in the 90s, I'm like, they're probably the exact same.
Yeah.
It's just with inflation and cost of living.
I think a demo probably in the early 90s was paying about $150.
okay.
And a master for a 3-hour session was about $300.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, it's definitely
It's increased.
creeped up there.
I've heard
Yeah.
horror
Not a
stories of
ton.
people being,
Not a ton.
with the way that really pop country music is made these days. I've seen that move more towards, in my mind, I call it kind of like an LA model where the demo is the master. People are getting hired for the demo and getting paid the demo fee. And then all of a sudden, 4 months later, they're at Kroger and it's playing on the radio and the voice is different.
And here I'm going to give a pitch for the union.
Yes,
Mhm.
please do.
If that work was on a union card, they would get repaid for that. And that has become a problem in Nashville with younger players not really understanding what a union does for you
Mm-hmm.
and that they protect your work and that they protect by numbers by having a union card and everything being a paper trail. Then they're negotiating your wage. And you got to pay a 2%, 4% work due on that. But they're also making sure that you're not just walking in, playing on something for somebody and they're handing you $200 or Venmoing you $200. And then you hear it 4 months later and you'll never get another dime out of that
Yep.
recording.
Yeah.
I played on some demos back in the day, but because I had signed a card, when it got bumped up to a master, I got paid again for a master
Yeah.
because there was a reuse fee.
Yeah. We're so glad that you brought that up because there is, I feel like, a block. We're not the youngest generation in Nashville, but there is this block of being part of a union and like that collective bargaining. We're fully pro worker, full all of that here. And I almost feel, and it's a bit of a theory and an assumption on my end, but it's almost like people are so worried about getting work that they want to be able to say yes to everything. And this, like, having a union card, there's not a ton of union work anymore, percentage wise.
Right. And frankly, yes, if somebody sends me a track and I don't think it's going anywhere, if it's just a little whatever, they can pay me for it and I'll play on it. But if it's something that I think somebody's really going to do something with, or if it's somebody that I know their history or their track record or whatever, I'm sorry, I want a union card.
Yeah.
I played on a demo from one of the guys from Imagine Dragons a couple of years ago. And fortunately, I'd signed a card and they were cool with it. It wasn't like they were pushing back on it because you never know when that little piece might get used and picked up on. I mean, it might show up on a record in 3 years. You just never know. It's about protecting yourself. You have to have worth in what you do. And those recordings can last for 50 years or longer, whatever. Somebody may pick up something. How often do you watch a movie and hear music from the 60s? All the time.
Absolutely. So I feel like I would be remiss without asking, like, or playing devil's advocate here, and somebody listening, somebody younger that doesn't have a track record like yours, that doesn't have a resume like yours, was saying like, see, I can't say that because if I say I'm not going to record on this unless I sign a union card, then they're just going to find somebody else. Like, what would you say to somebody like that?
Again, I think you have to figure out, I mean, there are other ways of asking it, of saying, if you're asked to overdub, was there a card on the session? If there was, for the tracking, oh, well, just add me to that card. That's a real easy little, so that you don't have to file a separate, some of it's just about the paperwork and somebody, they just don't want to mess with it. And when you present it in such a way that it's easy, it's not going to cost them any more money, then I've just gotten them to say, sure, and filled out the card myself and taken it down to the union.
I've had indie deals. I've never had any of my sessions union. This is so foreign to me as someone who's paid people for 10 years to play on my records. I feel like it's just like not as common, obviously in like the bigger funded studios
The majors.
with majors and everything, it's different.
Yeah.
But so much of the industry is the indie level that you have no idea what's going to happen with a song. So,
Yeah. And I do think even from an artist perspective, and I think what a lot of people don't understand on the label side, because we made a point to sign cards for our SteelDriver records. So there's a paper trail because we've had a few songs picked up and used in movies and TV shows. It's not the label that has to repay us for that. If we sign a card as players on our own record, which we do, because we all play on, it's the production company that has to repay that. So if you get pushback from your label saying, we don't want this, it's not costing you anything. We take it out of our recording budget.
Yeah.
It's not that much out of our budget to make sure that we're basically protected. There's a paper trail on where those recordings might go.
It feels like the Wild West in a lot of ways now with the music business of just I'm, hopeful with the writer's strike in Hollywood. There's been conversation of can musicians ever have collective bargaining to try and make change with, how many thousands of listens you have to get on a song to make enough to buy a fancy cup of coffee that is also the equivalent to an hour's work on minimum wage. Obviously there's great, I know we're at the end of our hour, so we don't have to try and figure out wealth disparity. And
if you're not familiar with the NSAI, National Songwriters Association International, they are always lobbying from the songwriters' perspective on all of that, what you just described. And then the musicians union, they're always trying to lobby for protections and for coverage. The biggest thing right now in Nashville is these gaming companies come in and they hire string players and they don't want to pay them any residuals. They just want to do a flat fee, a buyout.
Yep.
And I get it, but these gaming companies are making gazillions of dollars.
Right.
Yep.
That's another ball of wax, but it definitely falls into that other 22 hours.
Yeah,
for
100%.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my little anecdote on that is on any given year, 40 to 80% of what I do is write and produce specifically for placements and sync and all of that. And I recently just had a song placed in, it's called MLB The Show. I'm not a gamer, but it's a really popular video game.
Sure.
And the fee to license my song is horrible. It's one of the lowest ever on anywhere I've ever placed it. And there's no residuals because it's a video game. It's not broadcast. And I was talking to my sync rep and he's like, this is what they offer the majors and all of that. And you look at the soundtrack for the game, it's incredible. I mean, you have people from Kendrick Lamar to all of this because it gets so much exposure. And I will say, you know, we've now released the song with the release of the game. And it's done well on streaming, I'll do air quotes well in retrospect. But it's just same kind of thing on, licensing pre-recorded stuff. It's they kind of have that upper hand. And I know there are millions of people probably daily playing that game. I got just a fraction of it.
There has been, we could talk for another hour about this too. There has, in my lifetime, just being in the business, an incredible devaluation of music. It hurts.
Yeah.
It's very hard sometimes. And again, that's another thing, again, for younger people that are just trying to get going. It's so hard to go, yes, you got to do this. You're awesome. Keep at it. It's going to happen for you. Because I think we've gone backward to kind of the times before big labels and music selling to touring. When people, back in the teens, 20s, 30s, before the real commercialization of radio and record sales, people got out and played live. And that's how they made their living. And that's what's happening now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's trying to get out and tour because that's where you're making your money. I mean, and I'm talking about big artists too.
Yeah.
Huge artists. And that's why ticket prices have gone up because, they're trying to make up that shortfall from album sales and all these other components. And that's labels, which is why people are willing to do the work to do their own label because they're trying to capture whatever those income streams as they can. And I totally get that.
I think also part of my mission, I share a lot and I share a lot on my social media of what it's like behind the scenes to be a working musician, a mother. And people have asked me even could you break down finances? And I'm like, oh, that's scary. I can't do that yet. But I think sharing this type of information for other musicians to know you're not alone in feeling how much of a struggle this isn't a personal failing, but also to fans, because music fans and supporters, I don't think everyone knows what the breakdown really is because they see big famous artists and think, well, they're rich.
Right.
But don't understand. And I feel like part of my mission is to try and share this information, not in a like, you should pity and feel bad for all of us.
No.
But to motivate, like, hey, if you care about music and art and books, how you consume it and where you consume it has great impact and power. And same for us. I think about that all the time of where I buy my books and really making sure that I'm putting it where I can see that it will impact and help create the culture that I want to sustain in this world, so that we're not
Absolutely
only ordering everything from Amazon and staying in our home and not connecting with people. Because even people that are in our family will say to me like, oh, you're going on tour and okay, so they buy your flight and this. And I'm like, no.
No, they don't. That gets pulled out.
I get a small fee to open for somebody and I spend more than that fee to, rent a car or pay for gas, get a hotel. And really the only way I ever take home money is selling merchandise. So buy those t-shirts, buy those records. Sharing this information, I think, is helpful because it's just people don't know.
It's vital. And it used to just cause me to grit my teeth when we used to go out every night to the record table, and try to sell stuff and sign autographs. We don't do that so much anymore. But, and people come up, oh, and listen to you on Spotify all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh,
yeah.
thanks.
Yep.
But then I realized, well, they were actually listening to Sturgill Simpson's station and we came up on it and they found out about us and then they came to our concert and they bought a ticket and now they're buying a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's again that thing that you love to hate or you hate to love.
It's an unfair, unjust system that we also need.
Yep.
We just need it to be built more equitably for artists. So
absolutely.
It just needs to change.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, we carry as much merchandise with us every show because it's the t-shirts and the LPs are suddenly hot again, which are so heavy and hard to carry.
Yeah. I literally,
really
I just flew home from a one-off show and like the way that I packed to be like anticipating having enough t-shirts in the right sizes, you know, and records, and my suitcase was over. It's wild. And then I'm also lugging a 4-month-old baby with me.
People see us on stage like, oh, SteelDrivers, you guys won Grammys and blah, blah, blah. You're selling out all these shows and it's great. It's like, if you happen to stay at our hotel the next morning, you're going to see us stumble down, grab a coffee, go get in our rental car, dragging all of our stuff.
Yeah.
Because we have 2 guys that travel with us. We're a 5-piece band and we have 2 guys.
Yeah. I've started doing this just in the last few weeks of doing behind the scenes, what it is actually like on Instagram, showing like what we do as a family on tour, because I'm just like, I want to know from other people. So I'm going to start sharing too.
Yeah.
In the vein of sharing, we have one final question we like to end these conversations with. And it's just to ask, is there something that somebody has shared with you along your journey that still resonates with you today? Or conversely, it could be something that you would tell yourself.
Your younger self.
25 and just getting to town before you had that audition with Patty Loveless.
There's kind of a famous quote by Emmylou Harris. It comes back around into my mind quite often. And I've shared it with younger artists and singers. And it's just, sometimes you just got to open your mouth and believe. Because there's times when you're at a show and, it's just like, what's going on? I can't hear. I can't, you just can't feel like you're putting your best thing out there. And she's just like, you just got to open your mouth and believe.
Yeah.
Here we go. To me, that lights up everything, even beyond being on stage. It's making records. It's just like, just doing this.
Believe.
Yeah.
She's the queen, so.
She really
100%.
is.
Yeah.
She really is. Well, Tammy, thank you so much for taking time this morning to
you
sit
guys
and
have
share
been
with
delightful.
us. Yeah, absolutely.
Come see a SteelDriver show sometime soon.
Definitely.
Yeah, we would love to.
Yeah.
Good luck with your children.
Thank you.
They're going to grow up and they're going to be just fine.
Awesome. Thank you.
My daughter, she'll be 24 in October. And I remember feeling guilt about missing things. And I always felt like, especially during junior high and high school, because we were touring a lot. If I was around there 50%, that was a pretty good average. And I'm the one now that looks back and goes, God, I miss so much. And she's like, Mom, you set the greatest example for me. You were out there doing what you love. And I knew that you loved me. And it's just like, oh my gosh, woo, tearing up.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
I heard the other day, because we had the whole family on tour with me a week ago, and I heard Aaron playing with our daughter, playing pretend with characters. And he said something about like, oh, your mom, and like something about me. And Georgia said, yeah, my mom's a singer and she plays guitar. And I was like, just hearing her talk about me, she didn't, you know, she didn't say any qualifiers. She just like said what I did, but I felt myself be like, oh, that's cool.
Take a lot of pride in that. Very. Oh, you will be the cool mom. And my daughter has certainly gotten a lot of mileage out of when her friends realize that her mom is in the one that's in the SteelDrivers. Because her age group, we've got a really young fan base. I mean, we've got all ages, but in that college, post-college age, and it's just like, her boyfriend will send me videos of him and his buddies singing along to SteelDriver songs. It cracks me up. So it'll all work out. It'll all work out.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you again, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. You guys were delightful. Talk to you later.
See ya. Thank you to all of you who subscribe to our Patreon or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get our show. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a second to do that right now, and we'll see you back here next week.